When thinking back on your life at school, how would you describe it? Regardless of how you feel about your education, when describing a school experience, you may have a certain set of standards that come to mind.
Whether it be curriculum, extracurricular activities, or the way culture and school collide, this isn't the standard for other educational systems around the world. When looking at schooling on a global scale, one would find that factors such as the socioeconomic status of both the nation and the individuals have a huge impact on these standards and their experiences.
Because of how different life can be for those who may struggle financially, we often fail to recognize how impactful this can be on the quality of education they receive. Some are forced to focus on putting food on the table as opposed to prioritizing receiving an education.
As a direct result, their native country falls into a vicious cycle of poverty and lacks the ability to develop individuals that are prepared to provide for the global economy and thrive in a professional setting. First, we'll be traveling to Mexico, where our interviewee spent 2 years working and living with students in San Luis, located right outside the border. Most people living in Mexico don't have the money to send their kids to private school, which is a student's only hope of having a quality education.
In private schools, students stay there for a week at a time, which is not only safer, but also allows the kids to have a sense of preparation for a successful future. Students are not even required to attend public schools, and often the teachers don't show up because their salaries aren't enough motivation to do so.
The times the teachers will just not show up in the morning, or they will just put them all into one classroom and have it like a free-for-all where it's not specifically like a class, but rather just like babysitting or nannying.
Public schools have limited resources, especially when it comes to learning tools, including technology, school supplies, and teachers.
There's less of a workforce, there's less people to get into that specific job, so the amount of teachers is limited. You'll see multiple grades combined in the same classroom, as well as grades are split up, so you'll have a morning shift for classes and you'll have an afternoon shift.
Many families living in Mexico need extra income to survive, so many kids end up working instead of going to school.
In the United States, we have a sort of standard for our students. We have laws that protect the student as well as the teachers, and so a lot of times you'll see kids that are forced to work instead of going to school.
Also, when parents are at work, children as young as 4 or 5 are forced to travel to and from school using an unsafe route and take care of themselves for an extended period of time.
Fasten your seatbelts because we are now headed to our next destination, Lima, Peru. We interviewed Mark and Anna Burgess, who grew up in the UK and later moved to Peru to serve as missionaries.
Here, the government hasn't invested heavily in education, and as a result, Peru has one of the worst education systems in Latin America. I think Bolivia is the only country which is worse.
Peru's government doesn't prioritize education, largely due to its significantly weaker healthcare system, which causes a deficit in resources, teachers, and facilities. No money is put into schooling, and most Peruvians can't afford the materials needed for school. Materials for one student is 1 month's wage.
This leads to overcrowded classrooms with 40 kids and no resources to teach students. Schools have little to no access to technology, especially during the times of COVID-19. Schools have been forced to shut down, meaning students have not attended school for over a year. Even when they are in school, there is little motivation from students, parents, and teachers to truly learn the material.
There are large classes where there is little to no individual attention to ensure understanding of key concepts. Students are forced to copy down notes and have no way of applying them, which leads to a severe lack of critical thinking. There are also no projects or presentations to prepare students for the workforce.
It's very black and white learning, so it's either right or wrong. There's no, like a discussion wouldn't happen.
They don't give presentations, so we take it for granted, for example, that you know how you would learn at school how to stand up in front of the class and give a presentation.
For our next stop, we'll be visiting Petra in Udine, Italy.
My name is Petra Scolaro, and I live in northern Italy.
The variations in economic status between Italian regions has a huge impact on the students' capability to continue on and further their education. Not only that, but private Italian schools are not correlated to a better education, but merely a symbol of the family's wealth.
Most high schools also require their students to commute to the nearest city due to the small populations of nearby towns. This can be difficult financially for the less fortunate students. These financial differences are especially evident between the North and the South, with the South being the more impoverished of the two.
Many children only attend school unattended compulsory school, which is up to the age of 16. And so they do so because they have to go to work.
Those who are fortunate enough are able to attend secondary school, and they specialize in one area or subject for 5 years. While studying the same subject gives one an in-depth understanding of these specific areas, the students are not as well-rounded in other topics.
According to the 2018 PISA report, 15-year-olds in Italy ranked significantly lower in the 3 main school subjects.
However, in Italy, after middle school, every student has to choose which type of school they want to attend, and they can decide between many different schools. Like we have linguistic schools where you study mainly languages, like I do, or classical schools where you study Latin, Greek, and Italian mostly, or scientific schools, humanistic, and many others.
There are also no sports, clubs, or other extracurricular activities at the high school level for the students to take part in. Our next stop is Sierra Leone, located in northern Africa.
Resources are extremely important when it comes to education. In order to have a successful school, you need to have resources available, but this isn't the case in Sierra Leone.
Our next interviewee is Jared Prisa, who is a minister at Church of the Lakes and has experience in Sierra Leone. Mercy Hospital worked both with healthcare and in child reintegration that would provide them with a private education. For children in Sierra Leone, this is often difficult to come by.
Have at their disposal any and everything to help their education. It really is a teacher in a schoolroom, a one-room schoolroom, with chalk on a blackboard, teaching them how to do the alphabet, their language alphabet, or to teach them the numbers. And there's no internet access.
According to the Borgen Project, over 40% of primary school teachers are untrained and school books are hard to come by, with 4 or 5 students often sharing one book.
When it comes to the poor of Sierra Leone, what I've experienced there was not a lot of them get an education outside of maybe learning the verbal language. Not many of them can read or write. It's a very illiterate culture.
Most children are lucky if they even gain an education, as it is the only thing that will break the cycle of poverty. The curriculum, however, is still limited to very few subjects.
In order to receive a better education, those who are more well off will often send their children overseas. Despite the struggles education faces, impoverished children in Sierra Leone will often cling to the chance for better education and work very hard with what they are given.
Those people in Sierra Leone was just how appreciative and joy-filled they were. And here I am, American, with really everything at my disposal. And I can, sometimes find myself complaining a lot when things don't go my way, or if I'm entitled and it doesn't happen for me. Whereas over there was never a sense of entitlement. There was never people complaining about not having enough. And they really did not have enough from an outsider looking in.
Our last stop is Poland, which is home to one of Europe's best educational systems due to the standard of excellence they have upheld for hundreds of years. Isabella Wright, who grew up and attended school in Chelm, Poland, explains how the motivation to learn has been constant throughout Poland's history.
Poland created a high-quality educational environment, I think due to our traditions of academics education, which goes back to 1364, when was first university founded in Krakow. It was one of the oldest in Europe. And going back hundreds of years, education was always integral part of our culture. Poland disappearing from the map, being divided by other countries, being a communist country. So all these things made impact, and the education in our Polish mentality is something very important, very strong, and something that can never be taken away from you.
Since Poland transitioned from a communist to a democratic country, many new educational reforms have been put in place, such as the bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degree system that is comparable to that in the US.
This, along with a more effective grading system and a greater emphasis on teaching foreign language, are just a few examples. Poland's government has made it a priority to prepare generations to carry their academic culture.
Transferring a little responsibilities from central government to local governments, and investing in teachers' professional development. So all these factors, I think, that made impact. and this is why Poland now serves as an example in Europe on how to modernize education to equip new generation with very good fundamental cognitive skills.
Another important factor is that public universities base their admission selections solely on a student's grades and are free for all regardless of financial status. Having an educated population that values their tradition of brilliance has led to the World Bank classifying them as a high-income economy, which furthers the cycle of academic success in Poland.
Every day in the US, students dread the sound of their alarms telling them it's time to go to school. Many don't realize how privileged we truly are to have this luxury. Education is a basic human right, and everyone, no matter their economic status, should have the opportunity to receive schooling on the same level.
But unfortunately, this is simply not the reality for many students. You can take steps to change this by donating to organizations such as Save the Children, Helping Children Worldwide, and the Turing Trust that provide better education around the world.
It is also important for the governments of nations worldwide to prioritize education in order to ensure future success of their country, as well as bring the seemingly endless cycles of poverty to a stop.
Educating ourselves on the economic situations of those around the world and how they impact their ability to learn gives us a sense of appreciation towards the gifts that we are so blessed to have, while also inspiring us to work towards improved education for all.